What's up, everybody? Hello, and welcome to Downtime by Initiative Rolls. We do improv training for dungeon masters and players of the game Dungeons and Dragons. And today we're having a nice little chat with a good friend of mine, not only a dungeon master of 30 plus years. This guy's an incredible improviser. We had him in class last week, and he blew everybody away. It was fantastic. He's also an outstanding improvisational and theater instructor. He's an extraordinary comedian and vaudeville style performer, professional master of ceremonies, world-class champion of karaoke. I've seen it with my own eyes and heard it with these ears. He's amazing. He is a contracted entertainer at the Highland Renaissance Festival in Eminence, Kentucky, making him the voice of Briarwood, the Bard of Briarwood, and also known as His Majesty's Royal Jester, Pocket the Fool. Ladies and gentlemen, John Cowgell. Good to have you, sir. Welcome aboard. So excited about this. We're going to talk mostly Dungeons and Dragons, but you've got such an outstanding and diverse background in theater and performing, and I know that totally lends itself to being a dungeon master and a player itself, and that's what I really want to kind of dive into here, because that's what we're all about too. First and foremost, just tell us, when did you get started playing RPGs? How long has it been? Like, what's the road been for you in playing this game?
Sure. First of all, I need to hire you to do all of my introductions. That was absolutely wonderful. I approve. I mean, I'm usually the MC for folks. I'm going to start just handing it off to you to do the things.
Hey, when you care deeply and passionately about someone, you are so excited to hype them up. So happy to do that for you.
I feel the same way. I appreciate it. Years and years ago, I've just turned 40. My mother, all three of whom has passed away at the moment, my mother, my grandmother, and my aunt. When my brother came back over from England doing the Navy, he actually brought back some of the original copies of the Red Book of Dungeons and Dragons way back when, the first big copy after chainmail. And my aunt, my mom, and grandma fell in love with it and started running games for the family.
Wait, hold on. You started playing this game with your aunt and your grandmother?
Oh yeah, and my mom, all three.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. Okay, cool. I love that.
And,
go ahead.
They started, and this was before I was born, because I was born in 1980. So they were running stuff for my nieces, or excuse me, my cousins, my brother and sisters. And I was about 5 years old, and they would run at the kitchen table. I came up to mom and was really, really curious, and I barely remember this. Instead of trying to explain it, mom picked me up and sat me on her knee behind the screen and started teaching. And this is how stuff does. So my first real bite of role playing in Dungeons and Dragons was sitting behind mom's DM screen, and I had a passion for it then on. I've been playing now, counting that as my first time playing. I've been playing for about 35 years, and when I was a teenager, I started DMing. So I've been running games for around about 20, maybe. So yeah, I was 15 or 20 years old when I started. So yeah.
Okay, so you're early teens and you get your buddies together. I mean, what was that like? Was it easy to get people involved, or like, what was your first party, your first group actually like?
I was very fortunate because the folks, I didn't have a lot of close companions and close friends when I was younger. I was one of the outcast kids, which a lot of us at the alternative mindset know how that feels when we go into school. But I had a couple of really close friends who already knew my mom, who already knew my family, and who were already well indunniated with the Dungeons and Dragons stuff my family got into. So finding the group to play with was fairly easy, and it was fun because it was amusing. Nobody wanted to learn to DM. Nobody wanted to play. And it's like, no, I don't want to be the rules. I want to have the fun. And I was the only one who was willing to sit down and read the book and actually understand how it works, rather than just, okay, well, you do this. No, you don't. I do this. No, you don't. You do this. I was like, no, I don't. We didn't want to do it that way. So I was kind of tasked with learning the ropes, as it were.
There's a strange sense of power I think you get as a youngster sitting behind the dungeon master's screen, right? It's a good feeling, but at the same time, it's, you have a lot of responsibility, but it definitely helps you with life in general, I believe, because it makes you feel a lot more confident as an individual when you have a group of people looking to you to provide all the rules and the story and everything. It's very empowering for youngsters. That's freaking awesome.
I will agree. It was a wonderful feeling. And once I taught my friends how to dungeon master, watching them have that same, they sit behind the screen and they would look like, I would see the same expressions as they kind of went through the realizations, going,
yeah, Yeah, most definitely. So when you first started running games yourself, I'm guessing that as a player with a family, there was a lot of homebrew or what we now call homebrew, but
Yeah.
like free form, playing. No one was completely restricted with modules. So when you started playing initially, was that your approach, or did you go off of published material for the most
Yeah,
part?
because that was all I really knew.
Yeah.
While my mom did have a whole bunch of the old school modules, which I actually behind me still have some of the ones that she had years ago.
Gotcha.
She would take some of the information off of the modules and she would put it into her own stuff. And mom had reams and reams and reams of papers of grid paper of maps that she had made. And we still have some of that collection, but she was a prolific map and dungeon maker. She loved the idea of actually making the dungeons and then pushing us through. So
Yeah.
just about 90% of the stuff she does was all what we consider homebrew now.
That's awesome. Just out of curiosity, you said that stuff's still around. So that's like, are those going to be like relics that you pass down through generations, you think?
Probably, if we can ever locate them, because we saw them
Oh
about
gosh.
5 years ago in a box. The box
Oh
has
wow.
disappeared, so
Oh
it's
wow.
somewhere in some sibling's collection of stuff.
It
I have
sounds
all of the hard media that she had that she passed down to me, but the paper media are somewhere in her writings. So
it
we have
sounds
to.
like the beginning of a really fun adventure.
Oh yes.
So now 35 years later, what is your preferred game system that you like to run now?
I'm still always at heart be a D&D'er. I mean,
Sure.
give me second edition D&D. I still have a game system, a game group that I play with at second edition. I started when I got back into DMing within the last 10 years because I took a little bit of a break.
Sure.
But when I got back into the DMing, I started fresh with 3 and 3.5. And then when I took another break and got right back into DMing within the last year and started with 5th ed. But Dungeons and Dragons itself, just as a concept, the base
Hmm.
game has always been my favorite because it was what I started with. But if we're
Yeah.
talking specific editions, give me second ed any day.
Yeah, second ed's rough. I love it. It's definitely a very nostalgic and have a soft spot for second ed too because that's what I started with. But I felt like when I was doing it, I wasn't doing it correctly. Like we were in it unintentionally fudging rolls all the time just because we didn't want to do the math. I mean, THAC0 is an insane system to try and master when you're 13 years old, let alone today even. So I feel like that was a huge improvement
For
fixing
those
that.
players and dungeon masters that have never heard the word THAC0, first of all, for old school players, THAC0 is something that will make you quake in your boots.
Sure.
Back in the day, THAC0 was THAC 0, 2-hit armor class 0. It was it was a little a guide of an idea, basically what you had to roll as a base number to hit a certain armor class. And back then, armor classes didn't go the higher you go, the better. It was the lower you go, the better. And whereas we have 10 as a base neutral armor class, 0 was considered a base neutral armor class. And beyond that, -1, -2, -3 made you harder to hit. So yes, all of the math.
Yeah, being a very adequate explanation you just gave, it's still so complicated.
Yeah.
Oh man. But so now I guess so you're still doing a second ed. You're also doing 5th edition. Personally, what I love about 5th ed is how they made it intentionally kind of rules light. I mean, you have a very concise set of instructions on how to play this game. But what I love most about what the creators at D&D have now done is really officially put the ball in the dungeon master's court himself and said, this is your game to run. Take these rules as a guide, as long as everyone is, in agreement. Of course you have your core rules, your rules as written, as they say, but a lot of it's up for interpretation, which means there's a lot more opportunity for role playing.
Yeah.
And then the dice end up becoming less of an officiator of what happens next, but more of like a guide, because you can base your DCs on a fly, and if someone's doing a skill check, if they roll 1 or 2 points higher on their die, then that determines how you as a DM interpret what happens next, right?
Yep.
And I love that. It's something I think it was that I never really grasped as a youngster trying to play this game, and it really kind of helped with that. Now, tell me about the groups that you're currently running. Like you have multiple games that you're running right now.
Ish.
Okay.
First of all, I've my dear friend I've known this gentleman for 25, 30 years, for most of my life. And he actually is currently running a second edition campaign that actually is a combination of a world he and I have been working on for the past 20 plus
Okay.
years.
Yeah.
And he actually runs a version of the world. I run a version of the world. And in his version, our two parts of the world have remeshed, and we're actually kind of melding our ideas back together because we had been separated for a good 10 years of our life, and our idea for this world had split but run across concurrent ideas, similar gods, similar magic systems. And when we got back together and realized it, we started planning to put the worlds back together and actually read the storyline. So he's currently running the second edition version of that, whereas I, in my DMing campaign, are running the 3.5 or the fifth edition version that are literally parallel dimensions that are about to recross.
Yeah. That's amazing. So do you guys still consult or okay? And do you play in each other's games? Is that how this works?
I play in his game, but being that he is a nurse, his schedule is not as
Got
loose
it.
as mine is. Since I'm customer service, I do 9 to 5, so I've got a more set schedule. He's 16 hours a day or 12 hours a day, 4 days a week, and then sleeps. So
Yeah. So you made an interesting. You revealed something about yourself when we last spoke last week. How that you take a lot of pride and enjoyment out of introducing this game to new players. But with this particular play group, how long have you guys been together playing in this world?
well, my brother and I again call him my brother. We've been friends long enough that we are siblings at this point. We have been gaming together in general for just about as long as we know each other. And this particular game, I have been a part of the storyline for a good 10, 11 years. And every time something would happen, the original group would break up. He would reconvene and put another group together. I would be playing a different character, but the storyline that we had done was still there, and it was just played upon it. So I've been a part of 2 or 3 different iterations of this particular gaming group following the continuing storyline of the world. It's basically it is a dynamic world. So the world is always there. The world's always changing. The players just have agency to affect the world.
This is perfect. Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. Now I want to ask some really, really deep questions about this. First and foremost, as long as you've been creating adventures and narrating, gaming sessions with this world, as tends to happen, has there been an example of your players just completely going taking the adventure off the rails? You have no idea that it was going to go this way, and what did you do in order to keep them engaged while you were just making stuff on the fly? Like, how's that work for you?
Well, and to give everybody watching just an idea, I knew this question was coming, and I'm glad he asked me that earlier. So I've had a chance to sit here and rack my brain and try to come up with a time frame.
Yeah.
And in the years that I've been doing this, I cannot remember a time that my players ran away with the game. And I know it's an odd statement, but let me
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to say that probably says a lot about you as a DM in order to being able to influence them a little bit, Yeah. Okay.
The way I play my game is, and this is how I try to introduce people to the idea of dungeon mastering. I have a skeleton of an idea. I have the head of the skeleton. That's going to be the plot hook. And then I have the bones laid out. Says, okay, this is significant event, significant event, significant event. At the very bottom of the skeleton, this is where I eventually want the game to end. This is where the leading. And as we play, as my players get invested or get curious about different parts of the world, they'll come up with a little bit of meat to throw on that skeleton, and they'll flesh that particular part out. A lot of my world building is purposely, especially my campaign building, is purposely left in the hands of the players, although they may not realize it. Stuff that they'll throw at them. I may not have an idea of how this plan is going to work out, but then I'll hear my players start talking and trying to figure out how the plan works. And I'm like, you know what? That's perfect. I'm not going to tell them, but that's exactly how that's going to work. And I'll write that down and throw that in. And as they go through, as they make that meat out, the world itself is the skeleton. So any place they go in it, they're going to find a significant or a possibly arbitrary piece of whatever puzzle or adventure they're going to find. And I'm going to let them lead me. Again, I have small pieces, and I can pick up that piece and go, oh, you know what? This is going to fit exactly right where they wandered. They're going to help me build it as they go. And other than players going, we're not going to do this, we're not going to play, I have never had a game run away from me because I try to keep that particular idea of letting the players lead where the game's going to go to begin with.
That's the most perfect answer I could have asked for, because that's a lesson that I feel like I'm constantly relearning. Because as a DM, when I'm creating my campaigns and creating notes for my adventures, I have an end goal in mind, and the way I perceive it is my job is to get the players to that end goal. The direction and the route that they take is totally up to them, but I need to get them to that end goal. And I think sometimes that's very inhibitive of the players themselves. And I just had a discussion with my players. And we have a Facebook group where we do a lot of chat in between sessions. And I was kind of revealing to them, like, I get that you guys, even though I may present the destination to you, it's totally your job to choose the route. I just have to willingly admit that I'm trying to make sure that your detours are the most scenic routes possible and make this fun for everybody, right? So more importantly, I think you just hit it on the head by essentially explaining that putting together putting as little prep into the adventure itself and making it so open to whatever could happen, that's the way to go, right?
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. It is a delicate balance, because I also will sit down and occasionally, and this is to my mom smiling somewhere in the background, I will have very large, very detailed encounters that I will make. However, I have made those particular encounters that they're modular. So if the player does not go to a particular place where I expect the big bad to meet them, or I expect a lieutenant of the big bad evil guy to meet them or something, then I will take that entire encounter ad hoc, pick it up, move it, change some flavor stuff, and then they'll encounter it somewhere else. I will make those big detailed encounters, but where they end up finding it is going to be up to them.
Yeah.
Because I will put I'm a fly by night or a wing and a prayer DM. I will sit down with very little prep because that's how my style is. But there's nothing bad about having a DM that is extremely meticulous. There's not a problem with that whatsoever. It's just for me, when I do that, to make sure that it doesn't get ruined, I will make it modular enough that it can be picked up and moved to a different part of the skeleton, a different part of the adventure if necessary. But again, that's just the way I play. There's nothing wrong with somebody that plans their adventures out. It's just my play style works for me as a DM.
Yeah. What do you think you do differently for the group that you have spent years playing with versus a new group, like people that are just they come to you because they know that you're a dungeon master, they've been wanting to play this game forever, they want to sit down. What do you do differently for a group like that? Oh, you cut out a little bit. I don't know if your mic's muted.
Better?
There it is. Yep, that's it.
I accidentally hit my mute button. My apologies.
Yeah.
It depends on how new they are to the idea of a structured gaming setting in general.
Yeah.
To go a little bit and backpedal on that, I view the idea of gaming itself almost as the idea of a group storytelling, like you were sitting around the campfire and telling stories where one person sets the narrative and the other people go around the circle and help tell the story. Any type of group storytelling like that, it has to start somewhere. And the referee, game master, DM, storyteller, whatever you want to call it, is the person that kind of sets that ideal. And it is that group storytelling because the DM can't have the game without the players. The players can't really do a lot of the game without the DM itself. If they are brand new to this idea, then the first couple of games are going to be almost pure storytelling with very little actual mechanics. Maybe it's like, okay, congratulations, here's a coin. I want you to call high or low and then flip it. And whatever, if you make it, congratulations, you succeed. If you fail, then we'll move on from there and I'll give them a consequence for it. It gives them the idea of player agency along with the idea of the die roll for the coin flip for the die roll of random chance. As we go on, I start adding rules like the third or fourth. I'm like, congratulations, here's a sheet of paper. I want your name. I want what race you are. I want what class you are. Give me a little bit of backstory and give me a little bit of what your critmen are. A very basic character sheet. The fifth or sixth thing was like, okay, let's go ahead and start talking about statistics and start talking about your stats, your abilities and stuff. And I will introduce the mechanics as we go along. Because I'm not going to sit them down if they never played and say, okay, boom, here's the book, here's a set of dice, here's your character sheet, go create.
Yeah.
I could, but that's going to make it all the more daunting for them to get in. And as a firsties DM, which is what my friends have titled me, it is my job to hook them in and give them the love for their game that I had when I was younger.
That's huge, dude. I love that. I'm working with a guy here in my hometown who's interested in doing, professional dungeon mastering, and I'm working with him to, make this available for families that have an interest in it, and basically they hire him to do a one shot or something like that. That way they can get a taste of it, and he can show them how the game system works and how much fun it can be, and then let them take it home and play it around their own kitchen table or whatever. But that was a discussion that I had with him too, is like, we need to figure out a way to introduce people to the fun fantasy concept without just hitting them with a bunch of rules in the beginning. So we came up with the idea of just having pre-generated characters, but what you just said is even better, because you're essentially letting them create the character after they've already had a taste of what it's like. Mm-hmm. That's genius. I'm probably going to steal that from you.
Everything I use, I completely and totally feel free to steal it. I'm happy to have it used.
Okay, so then that's a perfect segue into where we're going to take this next. I want to know about your theory when it comes to creating characters of your own. NPCs, important villains or important adversaries. Like, what's your initial approach for something like that?
It's got to be something that sticks in the character's mind. I mean, you have played for a little while, and you will know that the DM will create a bevy of NPCs to interact with, and occasionally the characters will go, "Hey, what's that character's name?" The DM will come up with a small amount of information, and for some reason it'll be something just enough that will hit in the character's mind, and the players will lock onto this PC, and they will become the PC the characters will cling to. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a meme online. The DM says, you walk into a tavern, sitting at the bar there is a man clad in black flowing robes with a steel crown on his head, right, and 3 orbs of living fire surrounding him, and the players go, is there anybody else? DM goes, there's a goblin sitting in the back of the room drinking an ale. His name is Sam Schmorkel. Ooh, I'm going to go talk to Sam Schmorkel. There's something that
Sam Schmorkel effect, yes,
character that hooks the player. It is our job as a DM to be able to come up with something interesting about that particular person or about that particular character that will stick in the player's minds. And as long as we can come up with that, then we have succeeded. Even if it's just a small throwaway character, if it's something that the players will go, hey, I remember that guy, then you've done your job well.
Yeah. So what you mean is like later on when they see the wizard with the crown, then they want to go talk with them afterwards, or
it's just one of those things. It's almost arbitrary what a player will hook onto, because you present them this well thought out character they're waiting to talk about. They're like, no, I don't want to talk to that guy. I want to talk to the little onion thing in the corner. Right, and you're like, well, okay, let me write up a quick bio on the onion thing, and that becomes their favorite character. Something you did made that small goblin hook in that character, and they may never ever go talk to the guy in the black robe with the crown again.
Okay, perfect. So playing off of that, then what do you do to make your goblin Sam Schmorkel stand out and interesting? Like, this is something you have to do on the fly, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
For my idea, when I do a quick NPC like that, it's the way I DM. To pop out of my head randomly, I'll give him an interesting voice.
Yeah.
Schmorkel, hello. Yeah. Sam, how are you? Something that will make them, like you just did, make them laugh, make them I like this guy.
Of course. So it starts with a voice, something that stands out in his character. Do you spend a lot of time after the session to really kind of flesh out the character, or are you trying to like run the gears in your brain quickly to come up with that right away? Like, how do you get in with it?
I will run the stuff in my brain quickly to begin with, just for that thing, and then depending on how much interest they have in that character by the end of the session, depends on how much extra oomph I'm going to put into it. Maybe tie them into a quest or something.
Perfect. You made a fantastic suggestion to me last time we spoke, and I went ahead and I ordered this incredible book called Easy Street. This is phenomenal, dude. I mean,
isn't it though?
This is a gem. And I understand that this is not written for dungeon masters. This is not written for your average stage performer. This is specifically geared for people who work in the Renaissance Festival industry, which you do. And I definitely want to talk a great deal about that as well, because I know, having an early experience with playing fantasy style role-playing games probably influenced you a great deal and drove you towards your profession, working as a performer in annual Renaissance festivals. But there's a lot of overplay or a lot of overlap, I guess is the word I'm looking for, where you can take so much from something like this and turn it into ways to build characters. I mean, this young gal, Anne Elizabeth Shapira, I believe is how you pronounce her name. And she is the Queen of Jesters, the Jester to the Queen in Milwaukee's Renaissance Festival. And I don't really know what the fair is actually officially titled.
And she is actually the official fool of Milwaukee, the municipal fool of Milwaukee. She actually has that governmental license. She is the municipal fool of Milwaukee.
That's so right.
Yeah, she actually portrays the historical jester Jane the Fool.
Jane the Fool, absolutely. Yeah. And this book is filled with so much great information. Now, I did definitely skim through a lot of it that was specific for interacting with customers or patrons, but I do want to go back and read a lot more of this stuff. When I read books, I usually, when I'm done with them, I very rarely will hold on to them. I usually, take them to a used bookstore, or I'll donate them or something like that. Like my book collection is never very large, but this is one of those that I'm going to hold on to for a very long time because this is a great reference tool. She talks a great deal about how to adequately build a character, creating with just a couple of simple questions, motivation, what kind of status this person has. These are all very simple things you can ask yourself about a character when you're creating them that totally establishes who this person is.
Yep.
Do you fall back on a lot of that? I mean, I'm sure you probably, well, let me ask you this. At what point in your career did you read this book or learn about her strategy for character?
About 5 years ago. It was actually because a little longer than I was introduced to AE, to Anne Elizabeth, just as a person, just as a character. And we've become friends on Facebook. I've never actually had the opportunity to meet her in person because distance. But I was introduced to her as a person, introduced to her as the character Jane the Fool, which had become one of my idols just in general as a Renaissance jester, as a Ren Fair jester. And then when she wrote Easy Street, it was introduced to us during one of the years of training for the Ren Fair, because every year for the Ren Fair, the cast themselves, not the entertainers, but the cast go through about 3 or 4 months of rigorous improv training to be able, especially for those that have never done it before, it gives them an idea and opportunity. And one of the years when Easy Street first came out, a lot of that was incorporated. And that got me the taste of her ideas for character creation. And that got my brain bubbling around how to adapt that into a role-playing setting.
Yeah. So that's exactly perfect. What I was hoping you were going to say. Furthermore, though, when you read her book and started to utilize some of her, I want to call them rules, honestly, like they're like almost like rules for engagement, she has, when you're approaching the concept of creating a character, these are the things that you should always keep in mind. Did that change the way that you were performing yourself, or were you already kind of working towards that?
I was working towards that, but that helped conceptualize, that helped kind of concrete how my approach would be. And it has become just a great boon for me, especially whether it's working at the Renaissance Faire, which I've been Pocket for now for a decade or so. So Pocket as the character is fairly set in stone about how he interacts with things. But even when I'm doing haunted house characters, because I've been doing haunted houses for the past almost 25 years. And when I create a character in Dungeons and Dragons, whether as a PC I need a character or as a DM I need an NPC, a very streamlined version of what she has in the book is actually what I utilize to be able to help make NPCs on the fly.
Yeah. And just real briefly, for those of you guys that are watching this, what I picked up from this, I crushed through this book in the span of less than 24 hours. It's less than 200 pages in the book. Easy read. Her narration is so informal, it feels like she's right there just talking at you, which is fantastic. So it's an easy read. Right off the bat, what I took from this is really easy ways to build a character by asking, what does this person want? Essentially, what is their motivation? Like asking this person, if I was to ask you who you are and what your position is in life, what would you say? And looking back at all the NPCs that I've made in the past, like I know that I've um, just kind of automatically answered these questions, but it wasn't intentional. It just sort of
Mhm.
happened. But now that it's intentional, I feel like it makes it even easier.
Oh
So
yeah.
then the next question is, what's standing in the way of you accomplishing your goals? And now
Uh-huh.
you have a conflict, and that's really all you need to have a fleshed out character. That's it.
Yeah.
What do they
There's
want? What's
actually
stopping them from getting it?
yeah, there's the 5 questions that she pulls out in the book, and actually, I do. I have taken that, spun it into a D&D thing. I actually do panels at conventions on character creation based around that.
Yeah, definitely
Uh,
tell us more about that.
oh yeah, I've titled it amusingly enough, "What a Character: How to Bring Life to the Voices in Your Head."
What a character,
Because
how to bring life to the voices in your head.
because
Got it.
as a DM, um, it is our job to create everything in the world except for what the players are. So you have tens of hundreds of characters of NPCs that are either there or have yet to be created, kind of floating around. Just ask yourself 5 questions, and it's who are you, or who are they? What do they do? What are their goals, or what do they want, I should say? What's standing in the way? And then, of course, connecting with the player agency. How can the player help?
Ah, okay.
Because it gives them an identity, it gives them a job to do, it gives them wants and needs, it gives them a conflict, and it gives them a hook of how the players can assist with said conflict.
Can you just, because I just want to imagine this, can you give an example of something that you've done using that method?
I'll give you one real easy. I actually use it
Sure.
during my training, and as you can see, I've dropped into a different accent. Hello,
Sure.
folks. My name is Pocket the Fool. I'm His Majesty's Royal Jester here in Briarwood. It's a pleasure to meet you. I have a question for you. You see, His Majesty has sent me out on a wee bit of a quest. You see, I tell jokes, and it's my job to tell some jokes. However, my jokes aren't the best. I mean, they're jokes, just not good jokes. So His Majesty wants to hear a great joke. Unfortunately, I don't know the greatest jokes, so I've been sent on this quest to find one. So my question is for you, my friend. Do you have a good joke that I might be able to give His Majesty?
Oh my gosh, that's great. So, do you want to keep going? I'll give you a joke and you can play with it.
If you would like to, that's completely fine.
Okay. So, why did chicken cross the road?
Oh, that's a good question. Now, why did the chicken cross the road? Now, we need to have the answer to that now.
Well, clearly to get to the other side.
Why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the other side. That's interesting. I like that. It's very metaphysical. It's very ephemeral how you think about it. I will definitely put that in my pocket here, and I'll give it to His Majesty and see how he thinks. Now, could you direct me to anyone else who might have a joke? Because the more jokes I have, the better it'll look when I give them to him, and the less likely I'm going to be kicked out on my belts. And then he prances off. So, who are you? Pocket the Fool. What are you? What is your job? What do you do? His Majesty's Royal Jesters. What do you want? I want to. I want to tell good jokes. What's standing in your way? My jokes aren't good. I have to find one. How can a player help? Do you have a joke I could use?
Yeah. So, intention, I gave you like the most basic, worst joke ever, just like the most obvious joke ever, just to see what you would do with it. And I think that it's a glorious thing because you've also taken it a step further, which is something I really love about the over or the overlap of performing like this, and then also DMing, because you want to keep your players engaged the same way you want to keep the patrons that you work with and see every day in the same way. So that even if your players don't give you anything to work with, they give you something super lame. Why did the chicken cross the road? You were able to make that something interesting and intriguing, right? Gosh, yeah, it's so good. So what other things in improv training, because I was really hoping that you were going to mention that too, as far as working in the fairs, what kind of things do they do to help you guys flesh out your characters, or more importantly, keep patrons engaged, that may also overlap into keeping players engaged? Anything come to mind?
Well, to open the chest, that is the locked chest of Briarwood specific role improv training, because the boot camp that we put people through in Briarwood, which is the name of the village in the Kentucky Renaissance Festival, the Briarwood improv training is it is an entire thing unto itself. It's very unique. We go through the idea, especially if they've never had any type of improv training before. We'll do your basic icebreakers. We'll do your basic pass the ball, word association games, and get to a lot of theater, because we do have several theater folks that come in and kind of help us with the improvisational. I do stuff as well. I don't have any formal training with theater stuff at college, but I have a lot of experience that I've had that I put in. But we will do a lot of the games. We will also sit down and talk about what type of character you want or what niche you're going to fill in the cast. And we'll go through the 5 questions. We will go through the idea of how you rank in the royalty society, whether you're a member of the peasantry, whether you're a merchant, whether you're following along with the king's retinue. We'll go into background. We'll do skits. We'll come up with ideas, basically kind of writing little 1 or 2 minute skits, 1 or 2 minute miniature D&D adventures where you're interacting with 2 or 3 different characters,
Right.
where you make a scene in front of the audience members and encourage them that are walking around looking to actually come in and partake as part.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, as you saw, that's exactly the kind of stuff we do with initiative roles, man. I mean, it's collaboration in imagination, bouncing ideas back and forth from each other, working together to, what I like to say is, when you're in improv class, every idea is a brick, and we're just adding more bricks, and eventually we're gonna build this house that we can all live in and enjoy. It's a fantastic and inspiring thing to see happen. We see it every single week, and you guys have done it yourself. That's freaking awesome. So if you, and I'm kind of switching gears a little bit because I wanted to make sure that we touch on this too. If you have a new dungeon master coming to you for advice, what kind of things do you tell them they should be doing right here and now to get ready?
Well, to start with, yes, familiarizing yourself with the rules is a good thing. I would not suggest, I would suggest normally if you're going to become a dungeon master, make sure you have access to the player's handbook of whatever gaming system you're going to be doing. You don't necessarily need the DM's guide to start off with, but you make sure you have a copy of the player's handbook because you want to know what the players are going to be expecting from you. Once you get there, remember, and this comes from me, and I am a theatrical dungeon master. I am story first, rules secondary, and that's always how I've been. That's how I was trained, literally how I was raised. So this comes from a unique place My outlook does not match the same outlook as every other dungeon master out there, and I will not poo-poo on theirs. Their outlooks are just as valid. This is just coming from me. Make sure that you engage your players how they want to be engaged. Find out who you're going to be playing with. If you're coming as a new dungeon master and you have people that are already wanting you to DM, because a lot of people will come as a DM, they have a group of friends that want to play, but they don't have anybody to DM. And this has been the prevailing reasoning that I've seen. I could be incorrect, but from my personal experience, that's how these new DMs crop up. Find out what type of expectations your players have. Do they want an engaging story? Do they want to come in and play hack and slash? Do they want a lot of puzzles? That is going to build as a DM how you're going to structure your game. That is going to be, do you want an engaging story? Do they need to research some traps and some puzzles and stuff? Or do you need to really sit down and actually plan out encounters and have good stats with monsters and such? Now, some groups have a mix of players, which is fine. And you'll have a little bit of everything. But find out what the player agency is. Find out what type of players you have. That is going to be, as a storyteller, as a DM, your job is to have fun for yourself, yes, but as the DM, your job is also make sure your players are having fun. Find out what type of fun they want to have.
This is golden advice, and the reason I know that it's golden advice is because I've definitely experienced that. The games just got so much better when I took the time to understand what my players wanted out of it. And then also, the best DMs that I've talked to personally, they all share that same sentiment. It's one thing to sit down with a group of your friends and have an idea of how you want the game session to go. And that might be fun for you, but it gets exhausting for them if you're trying to push your style of gameplay onto them. And I made that mistake before where I just wanted to make a very big, elaborate, grandiose story, but some people just wanted to roll dice and kill monsters. That's all they wanted out of it. When I discovered that, I realized that you have to find a balance because not all the players want that. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
you might run into a group where they simply just, I mean, they're just all a bunch of murder hobos. You just keep throwing goblins at them and they keep slashing them, and then they're happy at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah.
But that's rare. And
Well,
it's also rare. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, my apologies. Please continue.
Well, I was going to say it's also rare that you'll have a group that is all just people who want to role play and just have that experience. Now, there are those folks that are out there, but I don't think they're all sitting at your table. So you have to have a little bit of everything.
I mean, that's for the hack and slashers. That's why there are classic stuff like the Tomb of Elemental Evil, or the Tomb of Horrors, or the Tomb of Annihilation. Those are hardcore dungeon crawls of nothing but fights and death traps. There's stuff that's designed specifically for that. And if you have a group of murder hobos, as the term goes, if you have a group that they just want to kill stuff, then you have the ability to plan a campaign or plan a game that is nothing but hack and slash, nothing but Diablo style kill and loot type stuff, which is completely fine. It just changes the roll and role play from ROLL to ROLE. And that's okay, because it's a style. There are some people, and I've been lucky, I've had a group that wants to sit with political intrigue and wants to role play all the time. And as a story-driven DM, that is my preferred method. I mean, I like to match it up, but if they want nothing but story and political intrigue, okay, we'll structure that around that, and I'll be able to tell a very nice and intriguing story. But most of your games, you're going to have a mixture of both. So it's your job as the DM to be able to kind of balance that. And the best DMs have that ability.
Do you run like a session 0, or do you speak to your players one-on-one to try and figure it out, or you just kind of pick up on social cues to figure out what they want?
If people drop in, because my game world is designed to allow people to drop in and out. I actually have magical reasonings for why people will disappear in the middle of a campaign. Call it lazy writing, but it's built into the world. So, but
I'm going to take that as an open invitation, because I'm rolling up a character today to jump in your world tomorrow.
We can do that. But if I have a person that goes, hey, I'm interested in playing your campaign, I'm like, wonderful. Here's a little bit of a questionnaire. I want to know what type of character you want to play. I want to know if you want to play a character that's from within the world, or if you want to play a character that's outside of the world, and stuff like that. And then I will usually have a one-on-one session 0 for about half an hour with that person. If we're unable to, I'll take 10 minutes before the actual game starts and ask them to come in early and sit down and say, okay, here's a basic idea of how your character plays. Here's what happens to your character right before you lead up to meet the party.
Do you see an evolution in your players as far as their preferred game style?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
It all I will give them about 70% of the players that I play with. I do notice that they evolve more into enjoying the story.
Okay.
Just because they will, a lot of their first idea with D&D is like, oh, I roll dice and I kill monsters. That's what they expect. And that's what I try. If that's what they say they want, that's what I try to give them. But I will drop bits of story, I'll drop bits of lore, and I'll drop bits of interaction with them. There are some that are stubbornly against it and will never interact and do that unless it's a physical challenge. But a lot of the players that I've interacted with, I will see them slowly getting into the story, slowly absorbing the lore, slowly enjoying the bits that I'm dropping and helping to tie that narrative together. So yeah, about 70% of the players I see, I will see their preferences to what they want in a game evolve.
And do you think, this is more so, I'm actually kind of curious myself. I don't know how many other people have experienced this as well, but it tends to be new players. I think mostly people who have not played this game for a very long time are perhaps a little nervous or lack the confidence to role play, so they don't do that automatically, right? Yeah. And I've found that the more that I kind of ease them into it, the more comfortable they get with it. And obviously it helps if the other players are role playing a lot. What kind of things do you do to make somebody feel a bit more comfortable with role playing?
Well, one of the things that I do in general is player agency is big with me. I like them to make a lot of their decisions. But if I'm actually doing some role playing with stuff, I will go out of my way, and I try not to put a player on the spot, especially if they are a nervous type or if they're not good with social interaction or not good with public speaking. I try not to put them on the spot, but I will address a lot of some of the decision making and some of the actual interaction role playing from an NPC directly to a player. I will not push it, but I will give the opportunity there and actually have them do a couple of major decisions, or at least try to help them do a major decision, because I want them to open up a little bit, to realize that this is a safe place. And I've also noticed that I've had friends and I've had players that are not big, just have a lot of issue with social interactions, that over the years that I've played with them, this has helped normalize the idea, and it's a safe place for them to actually work on social cues and work on interaction, and they've applied that to the real world, and it's helped them along.
Mm-hmm.
It's helped teach group dynamics. It's helped teach problem solving. It's helped teach map making and map direction and cartography. It helped some of my younger players, because I've done kids campaigns, help teach them math. It's something that we create and work on there that actually helps affect the outside world. To go back into that one, I try to direct some of the decisions at them and try to show them that this is a safe place for them to test that social interaction and that thing. And more times than not, it does help. If they wish to come out of that shell, it does help put the cracks in it for them to push for themselves.
Yeah, so much of that hits so hard. It's reminding me of my one of my weekly groups. We just introduced a couple of new players, and it's a dad and his 12-year-old son, and the rest of the players are all, guys in their mid 30s and early 40s and stuff. And I had to ask him, like, okay, are you guys cool with having a kid in the group? Because, he's may not be an advanced player necessarily. And everyone was like, yeah, we are happy to, kind of lead by example and show this kid how to play this game, and how to kick butt and how to get the most out of your role-playing experience. And they're all welcomed him with open arms. And it was so funny because, when I saw him roll up his character and we talked a little bit about it, he wanted a chaotic evil character, which is always scary,
Yeah.
especially if the rest of the group has good in their alignment and he comes in as a chaotic evil player. And I didn't want to discourage him. I figured, okay, if there's going to be a problem, I want him to experience and see why this is a problem, because I'm not going to be able to just explain it to him and tell him why this is not going to work. And it's been so interesting to see the dynamic, because this kid came in, and because his dad is a dungeon master himself, and they've played a lot at home, he's had a good deal of experience. But what I've seen is, because of that, this kid at 12 years old is he's got so much confidence within his own skin. He's interacting with guys that are twice his age, and he's in there bossing us around. Like, he's, yelling at the NPCs, and he's calling the wizard a nerd because he spends all his time in books and stuff, but he's good about it. Like, he's not a jerk necessarily. He knows, and we realize it's just his character. So everyone's having a blast with it. And that's a huge takeaway for me, is seeing what this game can do for youngsters, and remembering what it was like for me when I started playing this game. I didn't play with grownups until I was one. And it's so awesome to see that this kid has picked up on these social cues that you just mentioned, and really take to this game in an interesting way that is helping him grow as an individual. I mean, I can only imagine he's just going to be an incredible public speaker when he gets old enough to, start talking in front of large groups of people, or become a leader at in a career or a job or something like that. So it's amazing to see.
Well, some of that, and I will go back into my history. That's why I enjoy public speaking, and am good at it as much as I did. With growing up in a house with 3 dungeon masters, my mom, my aunt, my grandmother, and a lot of my siblings are DMs. My cousins are DMs and such, and my nieces, nephews learn to play. So it's a big family thing. But growing up in that atmosphere, not only with DMs, but powerful female DMs, which is a wonderful experience. It definitely gave me, with that teaching, it gave me a different outlook on how I deal with people and deal with life. And it gave me a love for interacting with people, a love for public speaking, just a love for being a people person. So that definitely helped form how I look at the world now.
Gosh, man. Yeah. And it just feeds back into itself. The more you play, the better you get life. The more life experience you get, the better you get at playing.
DMing and Dungeons and Dragons in general, role playing in general, whether it's TTRPG, whether you're doing old school online para role playing where you type in a full paragraph and wait for the person to respond to you, regardless of that, it allows you to step out of yourself, to experience life from a different point of view, to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. It allows you to stretch your experience as a person, as a human, to show you what it's like somewhere else.
Absolutely. I hope that we can do this again. Would you be open to that, John? Okay, great. I would love to spend some time hitting on some specific topics. So if you guys are watching this and you have some ideas on things you would love John and I to speak about, or things you want to get more from John's experience, put some questions in the comments, and definitely like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed to our channel. There's going to be more of this to come. This is the first interview, I think, of several to come. There's going to be some other dungeon masters I'm going to talk to, but John definitely has a superb mind when it comes to creating a very exceptional narrative experience. I've seen it myself, not just in class. I haven't actually played in his game yet, but I've seen him perform a number of times, and I can only imagine what the game is like. So with that in mind, what kind of things can you tell us that you have coming up? Where can we find you? Social media stuff that we can connect with you on?
Sure. First of all, something you and I may have discussed. I'm open if anybody in the comments wants to hear it, and if you, Rich, want to help me out with it, I'd love to do a virtual version of the how to create what a character, how to give life to the voices in your heads. I'd love to do a real version of that, since we can't do conventions and such. You can catch me online, my social media. You can catch me on either Pocket the Fool on Facebook, or you can do Foolish Pocket on Instagram, on Twitter and such. Also, one of my puppets has its own stuff at
wait back up a second. One of your puppets has its own social media?
Yes. Would you like to meet him?
Absolutely.
Hold that thought.
Insane. What do you got there? Oh my word.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, we're on YouTube. Hello, YouTube.
What is your name?
My name is Rom, R-O-M. I am an alpaca.
Of course. Where do you hail from, Rom?
English. I'm born in England, but I currently live in Scotland.
Oh my word. And so why
get off the camera? It's my turn. Fine. There.
And what can you tell us about your social media? Where can we find you and get more about you, Rom?
You can find me on Rom the Angry Alpaca on Facebook. You can find me at Angry Alpaca Rom on Instagram, and you can find me at Angry Alpaca Rom on TikTok.
So you're an angry alpaca.
Yes, I am cute. I am fluffy. And I am pissed off.
I love it.
All right, that's enough. Get away. But stop. Wait. One of the characters I do at the Ren Fair, as you can see.
Clearly a famous one, no doubt.
But you can find us all on that social media. I'll send you some links to show in the description and such. But do you have any final questions for me before we call it off, my friend?
No. I'm going to leave it at that, so we have more to talk about next time, for sure.
Fair enough.
Awesome. And thank you so much, John. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been Downtime with Initiative Rolls, and we hope to see you back here again sometime in the near future.
May your D20s always roll crits, my friends.